What do you consider, Rachel, to have been a major factor in your survival?
You know,
A combination of
I
things?
used to go out and talk to God a lot. I used to go out to this camp and I saw in the morning all these people on those electric wires. And I couldn't understand him. I used to say, I did everything my mother used to say to me. You know, I couldn't even go out Shabbat afternoon with my friends. I had to say my perek of whatever it was. And I did everything. I never went to sleep without saying Shema. I did everything I was told. Why? How can you look? How can you do that? I really, really was very angry. And I was determined to survive. And to survive. I didn't know I had to fight to survive. I just had to. I always had this feeling. I really always had that feeling. Hard moments there were, hard times, sometimes just, a hard barak strike. And if that I survived, well, I must come back and tell this. I must tell them these stories, how I lived through. So it kept me going.
You were young, for a start, which was in your favour.
Yes, and I was lucky. I survived like that many times. I was many times on the way.
Yes.
When I think of those 15 girls I left behind me there, and just like that I was left.
Yes.
Could have gone with them and.
Yes. Who survived from the family?
No. When we came back, now the 3 girls, what are we doing? We are in Berlin apparently. We didn't know. We were in a house, we came into a house, and don't ask me how we did, why we did that, how crazy we were. They still were loose chandeliers. And how we kicked them in mirrors into an empty house. We just broke everything. You know, how could they live like that? You know, look how they lived there, and we.
Yes.
And the next day, that was the first night. The first night, we came there during the day, and the first night we just heard shootings, and we didn't know what to do. We went out, and apparently that was the 9th of April. We wouldn't have known. We didn't know dates exactly, really, we didn't. But it was, they celebrated the liberation. Not liberation. What did they have to celebrate? It was the Russian army, the end of the war.
Yes.
When was it? 9th of...
I think
it was the
8th of May.
8th of May. So it was 8th of May. No. It was earlier. It was earlier.
At the end of the war.
Not the complete war. No, it was earlier because the Russians was in Berlin, that part where the Russians were, yes.
Only a few days.
Only a few days? Because the shooting, it was a celebration. Anyway, from then on, we started going home. How do we go home? Trams. And we had lots of troubles with the Russians. Lots of problems, and many times they wanted to rape us. It was terrible. If not these 2 big girls, I thought I'd get crazy. Each time, I remember we came to stage, that Hilda said, Rozika, by then I was already Rozika because we spoke Hungarian. She said, don't, even if I have to go twice, you will be saved. She'll go instead of me. Anyway, it was terrible. We had a terrible journey, which took a very long time to get to Bratislava. Yes, it could have been May, because you see, it took us, we only arrived to Bratislava was May, so that was something else in Berlin, until we arrived to Bratislava, by each time staying overnight at farmers. But I'm not going to all this story, it was terrible, just the Russians, horrible things we had to fight.
Endure.
It was very, very hard. They were terrible. But, because each time when they saw that they are survivors, they used to, you were good enough for the Germans, but the Germans were good for you, but we are not good enough for you. They wanted women. Anyway, we got to Bratislava. Hilda's sister survived in Bratislava, in the underground. So, by the time we came, she was already in her house. Actually, in Hilda's house. Hilda had a house. She was already married. She had a house. And she was in the bunker with a friend who lost his family, wife and daughter. And he was a sickish man, and Bergie, who looked after him in the bunker in Bratislava. So we lived all together. It was Hugo, Bergie, Margaret, myself, and Hilda. We lived together in this house. But groups used to arrive, people used to arrive from the camps, and I was hoping all the time somebody from my family. And in the house lived also a high officer, a Russian officer, and he used to take us with the car. He happened to be Jewish officer. And because Hilda's house, it was quite a big house, and he had a part of that house and had a car, and he used to take us to the train to see if somebody arrived, because everybody was looking for somebody. Well, there was nobody. For weeks we went, nobody came. And then they stopped. They said, look, you see, they stopped. But I asked the officer, and he came and he took me. And pinked that day as I came there and looked around. And he said, you see, nobody's there. And I said, all of a sudden I heard, Rushenka, and that was my brother. He was just a bundle. He was 34 kilos. And he never, poor man, he always said, you never forget that. We collected him, they took him home. I never forget his first bath. And he was he was in Germany, in a camp in, it's actually Austria, I forgot now the name. I visited there last year. After a few weeks, after he recovered somehow, more or less, he recovered, we started going home. We came to Budapest, and there we saw on the list survivors, a list of survivors, and there was my brother and my father. And then we just aimed towards home, just to get home. But there were no trains. It was again terrible hard to get from place to place, was impossible. We got home. Father was home and Yossi. And now me being already a woman, first start to build a home and start, but father was never the same again. He really wasn't the same. He very much, he just wanted to see us. For us he lived. He was zerbrochener Mensch. And but we didn't want to stay anymore in Absha. I didn't want at all, because I started, in the meantime, I wanted to learn. I wanted to go back to Bratislava, because they were very, very good to me, and I had a chance to learn something. In Absha, I couldn't do anything.
No.
My father just wanted to marry me off, and he wouldn't let me go without without getting married first, and then I could leave home. And no way. So it was very, very painful, very hard. But I lived for quite a while at home to establish we got the house back and established a home again, the house. And my older brother went straight away back to Czechoslovakia. In meantime, slowly, this part really belonged to Russia. This part they completely had a bordered off this place, this area, because this is really very Ukrainian. And after everything was established, Yossi stayed with my father, stayed on, and Israel and myself went back to Czechoslovakia. I started learning to become a nurse, and didn't have much education, but my Hilda's, in the meantime Hilda also, and I went into the movement, to the Gordodio Maccabi Tzair, and they helped me a lot to learn. They gave me somebody who helped me, Joshua, who helped me with the language. Because when I stopped, that was in 39, how old was I? Born in 28, okay? To go to become a nurse. So I really learned very much to the language, and then I was accepted and I was studying, but I was also very active in the movement. Israel became a very important part, and knowing that I'll be going there. And Margaret was the one I was in camp with, if you remember Hilda Margaret. And Margaret was big leader, was already before she went to camp, before she was taken to Auschwitz. She was in the movement very, very involved, and her husband and Hilda. So they were great idealists. So I came into very good hands, and I was very enthusiastic. And every night, every evening we went to the movement, and really we thought we are going to change the world. And but yet they knew a nurse they will be needing very much in Israel, and so that I should finish my yes. But Margaret. But that's another story. I think this I won't get in. Margaret wanted me to go on Aliyah. It was a very good Aliyah, she said, and I should go on this Aliyah. For certain reasons. That as I said, I won't get into that. She wanted to get rid of me, and I, being naive, and I thought this is it. We were a nice group. We were 20 Chavarim, aimed to get to Kibbutz Gezer. That's from the beginning already, from Czechoslovakia, from Bratislava. Went on this Aliyah in 1946. It was in April. We couldn't go via Hungary because the border was because we went on illegal Aliyah. And went via Germany, so we were stuck for a whole year in Germany, and finally we got to Marseille on a boat. Finally we got the boat, but this I'm of course cutting that part because we lived in DP camps in Germany. That's where I got to know some friends, different friends we made in Germany, that we got into new groups and bigger groups, because we were 120 of us were aiming to this kibbutz, but we were with more people. And we got on this Aliyah, Theodor Herzl in Marseille, and were caught in Haifa. That was a horrible Aliyah, and I was the nurse next to a nurse on the boat, and we were 800 of us on a very small boat. Got to Haifa, and they caught us. The British caught us, and we were fighting. 3 out of the 20 fell on the boat. We had some munition, and we were fighting the British. were killed, and they took us off onto another boat, on a British one, so Cyprus,
Thank you.
for a whole year.
That's
But that's another story.
that's another story.
Yes.
No doubt a very interesting one.
This.
Rachel, we'll start to wind up this interview to do with your war experiences with a few questions of how the war and its trauma has affected you as a person subsequently. How do you think the past that did affect you in your later life?
I tell you that I didn't have much time to think, because I came into an Arab prison. I mean, I came
Yes.
straight into war in Israel,
Yes.
and fighting
Yes.
again, and then getting into an Arab prison. I didn't have much time to think.
And how do you think your children have been affected by your past?
Yes, that is yes. Well, I have to get here that I was very happy in the kibbutz. Very happy. Met my husband, got married,